I think what we're talking about are groups of people who have aligned themselves with the symbol of a snake or a dragon because it's psychologically empowering, and they've seen it as such throughout history. And it also denotes power, wisdom, and all the things that the royalty like to think of themselves as having. In addition to that, it does appear as if there's been favored bloodlines through history, and those bloodlines, going back even into the British royal family and such like that. Do they allow the dragon inside their soul to let them be brutal and very draconian in their thinking and non-caring, all the cold-blooded aspects, psychological aspects of a snake, or are they different? Well, most of us would say they've encapsulated all the cold-bloodedness parts of what we would think of as a snake. Now, there are some people out there that are RH negatives, and they are considered possibly the reptilian humanoid hybrids. Interestingly enough, they call themselves sons of snakes and sons of dragons. Now, maybe part of this thing about making us afraid of the reptoids and the reptilians is part of their plan, because there's so few of them that if they don't convince us they're really, really scary, then we might have the upper hand from the very beginning. So a lot of people don't consider that. So even the idea that we vilify them might be part of some sort of a mass mind control project in order to make sure that we think of them, if they arrive on Earth, a certain way. And so we have to look at modern movies that are being made and how they're presenting reptilian humanoid characters, because chances are that is a form of preconditioning. So if we see them as aggressors, then we have to wonder, if they're coming to this planet, are we being set up to believe they're aggressors even before they get here? Now, it's not impossible to think that we would be lied to even by our leadership or even by scientists, because by their own ignorance or whether by intent, we may not know.
The ancient Egyptians not only had human forms with dog heads, but also reptilian heads as well. And I've learned one thing as an old Trekkie, that Hollywood has an insight. And there used to be a movie called V. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember it or not, but it was about visitors from another planet that looked like humans that were underneath reptilian.
Right. Right. Do you remember when Captain Kirk fought the reptilian humanoid Gorn?
Absolutely.
Classic.
You're going back to TV.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do believe that Hollywood has had a great deal of influence, but you've got to remember, a lot of Hollywood is run by certain, groups. A lot of the Jewish people control a lot of the entertainment business and such like that. So when you're seeing the films come out, are we really seeing a representation of something that's being let out through creative means, or something that's being let out through means of desensitization? I do believe that a large part of our television and film programming since the last 20 years, coming from the time of Jurassic Park and Barney the dinosaur, if you see that there's been that long ongoing trend that's been very heavy, and I do think that there's a process of desensitization that's taking place that prepares us for something that's going to be happening.
A lot of us have thought that, John, for some time, that Hollywood is the buffer before an event unfolds. A lot of people have thought, for example, that Steven Spielberg might have been getting inside information whenever he did Close Encounters of the Third Kind or E.T., the extraterrestrial. They're interesting theories, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. They certainly are. Even Enemy Mine and such, where they talk about a holy book reference to the Talmud, and how one person or how sometimes disasters can unite different species or bring enemies together. I think the lessons are all there, because we've been conditioned through history to be afraid of a life form like this by the church. And let me tell you something, most of what the early church did was the issue of control. So if they demonize the snake, there's an issue they have with the snake, and it may not be for the normal person.
I wanted to ask, I'm actually from Australia, so if you don't understand what I'm saying, just ask me to repeat the question. I wanted to know your take on what you thought about Jesus and God and religion into your theory of these snakes, people, dragons.
he was more of a Gnostic than he was what we would consider a traditional Christian of today, which means that the serpent played a huge impression upon these people who we know as the Essenes, who later evolved into Gnostics. And that area of our Western religion was crushed out by the Roman Catholic Church. They wanted nothing to do with it. My take on that is that I believe that there is some form of a consciousness, perhaps, or some beings that are going to be returning to our planet. But there is something to it. We also know that winged beings in the night have come down and swooped upon people. I keep referring back to that, or thinking back to that movie about in the desert there were reptilian humanoids living underground. And it was a very famous movie out of the 1950s. It kind of skips my mind right now, but The Gargoyles, that's right. And it was a great film, but, we don't know if maybe some cavern systems actually have winged humanoid beings living in them. We know that these guys have got to be so far advanced, it's just only our imaginations couldn't even give us a picture of what's possible. So, okay, we have physical beings that occupy the underworld of our planet with us. They are neighbors, and they're intelligent. They're intelligent, but we can't deny that there are also these others who are non-physical, and this is where the question gets up into, are they demons? Where are they coming from? How can they be non-physical? It's so frightening to be around them anyway. I can only imagine for some of these people how it feels to be having an encounter in the dark of the night. George Krill sat down in an interview with Sheikh Mubarak al-Shah-Gilani. This is the guy that the reporter Daniel Crowe went to Pakistan to meet and suddenly showed up dead. And when they interviewed him, he wasn't so much interested in talking about the interview. He wanted to tell everybody that there's these unseen forces on the earth. He said, and I'll quote here, there are beings who are not visible to you, he says, but they inhabit this earth. They're damaging, causing psychotic diseases, fits, epilepsies, and controlling the agents, controlling the human beings. Humans can be made to do things against their will. They can be made to commit crimes. They can be made to go out and kill people. All of your missiles, all of your rockets, spaceships go up, and electronics, they can be damaged, influenced, and be misdirected by the agencies of the jinn beings.
He's right about that.
There are other beings that occupy this planet, and they're not entirely physical. And we have to deal with these beings.
Let me ask you something about the devil, John. Satan looks like a reptilian. When you kind of look at him, even though he's red, they say, but, he's got that reptilian look to him. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that when those who wrote the Bible tried to describe things, they may have seen reptilians and called them devils?
Well, I think they recognized them as maybe the jinn and the other occupants of our planet until somebody decided that they weren't going to be interacting with these human slaves on the surface anymore. After all, they just woke them up. And when they woke them up, they said, okay, now you guys got to get underground because, look, you've made these guys kind of question why they should be pulling the plow and everything. And now you've created a slave race that's not so happy with its condition and that's looking for something more. So they were put underground. Now, I believe sincerely that the ancient Maya had encountered them down in ancient times in the Mesoamerican region, and primarily because their magicians and their witch doctors, or the Maya
shamans,
the shamans would go underground in caves, and when they went underground in caves and they were shielded from all kinds of light, they would imbibe in what I would consider early TV or something like that, in form where they would take some sort of plant drug and they would have visions. And this was entertainment to them, but I think after doing that, something was happening in the human brain. Their perceptions were shifting to where other, perhaps, beings, physical or non-physical, were actually making their presence known with these guys. And they were learning from semi-corporeal beings that went in and out of phase state with them. We feel overwhelmed by the powers to be on this planet, that they've so locked themselves into positions that there's no budging them off their pedestals. We can't escape the slavery, the system that's been created in which we've been given for what we call life. and it's extended itself in all regions of the planet. I believe a lot of us are feeling it's going to take something like a god or something like an alien force, powerful enough to come down here, omnipotent enough to come down here, and be able to overwhelm through magical means or advanced technologies the people that otherwise tend to want to suppress technologies to keep us stuck in a timeline that's torturous for human potential. We have technologies out there, we've seen them employed in which they're anti-gravity and such like that, to be locked into a system of control to where it's nothing but negative, and it has negative ramifications involving war and conquering other nations and such like that. To withhold that technology from us is not right. And so some people feel that something greater or bigger needs to come down, and they're hoping it's going to be the return of Jesus. They're hoping the return of Quetzalcoatl.
Do they need this visitation, John?
Well, I think that's an interesting question because, we've noticed that there's been alien interactions before at religious events, like the children at Fatima, where they see the disc come down, glowing sun come down and twirling around and releasing all the light and everything like that. So we know that they've interacted with us in our religious beliefs before. God, I would be, if I were an advanced being, I'd be so tempted just to zip down there in my little Ferrari craft and be visible on TV or something, just so the conversation gets started, like, let's get our minds off of the destitute situation we're in and go, what was that? Like a major distraction. To give us some sort of hope that something, a more advanced culture might drop in on us. Like,
come save us, please.
Well, give us some advice. Or let's say, take the witch doctor that's been in control of us, and let's just kind of like, can't you take his big beating stick away from him? I mean, I would, if I were...
What if they have their own motives, though, John?
Well, everybody's going to have certain motives, but I think the thing that we're looking at here is kind of twofold. We're looking at a change on the planet, which wasn't just predicted by me. We got, Arthur C. Clarke making the same type of predictions when he wrote Childhood's End. And he said that a race of returning reptilian humanoids come down to this planet and its effect on us. Okay, I'm telling everybody out there right now as a fact, the reason that you feel attracted to this subject matter, no matter how ridiculous it seems to sound like when you hear people talking about it, how extremist kind of fantasies are out there, there's a core element to it you cannot deny. It's actually something that's going to happen. And perhaps that, the dragons of the apocalypse are, the revelation is that of another species that we cohabit this planet with. I would and I would hope at some point we would be able to establish contact with them and trade rather than allowing special interest groups start to represent us and want to go to war against these guys.
You're assuming they're good people, though, John.
Well, I'm just assuming that we can't let our fears dictate an overreactive situation. Look, we've seen it repeatedly, in our own media, that when some event happens and we're very emotional, we just tend to surrender and let people that we don't otherwise trust suddenly tell us what reality is and to give us some sort of leadership. And what I've witnessed in my lifetime is that it's not so black and white, and sometimes people are misled. And they do say, even in the end, the elect will be deceived. So, there's going to be trickery out there. There's no doubt about it. These guys have taken a lot of money and built bunkers for themselves, and most likely 1 or 2 generations of their own offspring to man the shopping mall and everything underground, because they anticipate our own stupidity will lead us to a surface annihilation of the human species eventually, and or alien contact may take place, or warfare with an alien species, or something will happen because of a solar storm or cosmic rays causing all that damage. So I believe personally that we already have established, long-term established communities deep underground that have the Caesar's Palace-like indoor malls with hotels and streets, and people just don't know about the surface. They may be told that there's just nothing but a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.